right, welcome to Reptile Podcast. Reptile Podcast. Reptile Fight Club Podcast. I guess I don't know how to podcast, and that's what's sticking in my head, I guess. I'm Justin Julander, if I can remember my name. And with me here is Rob Stone. How you doing?
Doing great.
Excellent. I'm doing pretty well. I get to go herping tomorrow, so that's good. Things are warming up enough to potentially find something. I'm not, too getting my hopes up too high, but yeah, we'll see what happens and go a few hours south and see what I can find. But looking forward to herping with some legends in Utah herping and maybe even further than that. So I'm excited to see Pat again. By the way, Pat May has put out some fantastic herping videos on YouTube lately. He just put one up, herping Sonora. They found a dozen beaded lizards and boas and all sorts of crazy stuff. So check that out. Shout out to Pat May. His username is Pat May Utah on YouTube. So yeah, pretty fun to see those videos and see how well they did, man. It's crazy. Few other recent videos as well. I think he herps all summer and then post videos during the colder months, so he's been releasing them fast and furiously. So yeah, it's things are warming up a bit here, but still a little chilly. So I don't know. I'm itching to get out though, itching for warmer weather and seeing some scales. But what do you do? Anything crazy going on in your neck of the woods?
No, nothing too wild. Every kind of warming up. We had snow last week and then kind of getting warmed back up out of that. So the critters at the house kind of took that as the opportunity to warm up and things. I know we'll have don't doubt that it's fall, spring and we'll get cold again or whatever, but mostly they're pretty resilient to it. So yeah, paired up the Puerto Rican boas and Jamaican boas. Nice. And coming off of last year with the Jamaicans finally breaking their biannual cycle and missing. Right. I had some ideas for that I think I've talked about, where I think that's pulled out the cork tubes because I feel like she just sort of had sequestered herself and was able to box them out of that context. Yeah. So this time I pulled those out, made sure to do that. And within an hour they were copulating and had, I've been going for 3 or 4 days off of that and all. So sort of their normal thing. So yeah, I wasn't sure if being off cycle, if she would skip yet another year to get back onto that sort of cycle, or if it would be another year off, but looks decent. So we'll see. Maybe some of those to give away again. So yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I did get my first clutch of the year, and unfortunately it was all slugs. So my black-headed python slugged out. That really hurts to say that, but I guess I can't complain. I've gotten plenty of good eggs from her and just screwed them up. So what's the difference? Now I just have to worry less sooner, So what do you do? But I wonder if it was just because it was so warm this winter and it just kind of messed up the cycling. I probably should have pulled back on the heat, element in their cage and stuff like that. But live and learn, I suppose. I was all set though. I had all my, incubation medium set up and the nest box all set. Yeah, the incubation box all set up and ready to go. And then, no getting eggs this year. But it looks like a couple womas are gonna lay. My pygmy banded python should be laying soon. So things are moving in the right direction for other projects. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But.
Cool. Well, I would say that it's actually that readiness, not the temperature, that had you having poor results there. If in fact you were ready and good.
Exactly. I jinxed myself.
Into it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when I'm out of town, then she lays good eggs, or
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Or I don't have the incubator on, then she'll lay good eggs. So yeah, should learn that by now. But what do you do? All right. Well, without further ado, we'll bring on our valued guest here. We've got Paul Davis on the podcast tonight. So excited to talk to him about all things herping and such. We're going to talk about some techniques in herping tonight. So welcome to the podcast, Paul. How you doing?
So good. This is my first podcast, so this is super exciting for me.
All right. Yeah. Man, Rob's been getting some really good guests. So we're, I've just been kind of laying back and letting him do all the work. So I feel a little guilty, but glad glad he got you here
Awesome.
Looking forward to our conversation tonight. So,
Sweet.
yeah. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself, how you kind of fit into herpetoculture or herpetology and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, I sort of always tell people that my story is that I was once afraid of snakes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started looking up all of these things about snakes because I asked the question, like, why am I so afraid of these things?
Right.
And like, who does that? And then the more I started figuring out like how cool they actually were, I was like, okay, I think I'm actually interested in this. But long story longer, it was one of those things where I always grew up watching things like Steve Irwin,
right? And
I grew up with OG YouTubers like Herping with Dylan, and then Brandon from Triple X Herper Triple X, like those kinds of people. But that's where I sort of got my start in herping world.
Okay.
And it just sort of never stopped. I mean, it kind of got, bumped up again in 2020 when I basically had nothing to do.
Right.
Met 3 new friends and we just like dusk to dawn, go, go, go.
Nice. Yeah.
Sometimes. But yeah, I just remember being afraid, but also curious when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this one specific time when I was taking my dog in the woods, and there was a black racer on the edge of a forest, and something like shook me because it like started rattling its tail, and I had never really experienced that before. And I was like, what is going on?
What is it doing?
Why am I so afraid of this right now? And like, and that just led me into like deep research of, okay, why do they do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then I found Herping with Dylan and all of these other people. And I was like, people look for snakes? They can do that?
Right.
And I just, remember Googling like how to look for snakes. And this is before I even knew what a snake hook was. And it's like I would take a stick and make sure that there was a fork on the end of it. Break it off just at the right length, and I would take that out and be like, all right, we're going to look for snakes, and I'd be out for hours just like walking everywhere, not really knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Being completely fascinated just by everything.
Nice. How old were you at the time?
Probably in between the ages of like 10 and 12, like in that area.
Yeah.
And like that was still when I was confusing rat snakes with king snakes, and I would call DeKay's brown snakes a chicken snake. Like what? I had no idea what I was doing. It was so bad.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we hear that occasionally. I guess I was I think born with the snake gene. Like I just came out just looking for snakes, or excited to find them and all sorts of things. So I never really. My dad would take me backpacking, and this was obviously, I'm older, so it was before the internet. And so, you could look up books in the library or something like that. And that's kind of where you learn. So I didn't realize people did it, as like you said, like did it kind of full time or went out looking for snakes on purpose. I just thought, you just find them when you're out hiking through the hills or whatever. I didn't know you could go and flip rocks all day and break your back and hope to find a, little gem under the rocks. But yeah, so it was really kind of exciting when I, found out, you can do this. That's the whole purpose of the trip. And so, yeah, it's a good realization, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. And I remember figuring out like the whole ethic behind herping. And I remember the day I found out like you are supposed to flip things back.
Right.
I ran out my door down the creek where I was like, I know I flipped things here, and everything that it looked like I flipped it over. I was like, I gotta flip that back.
Nice. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Now, how did you find your people, like people to herp with and stuff?
I was herping by myself for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I would like ask some of my friends that lived in the area or my cousin, like, hey, you want to go look for snakes with me? And they're like, that's a little weird, but okay, sure.
Yeah.
But for the most part, as of now, it was social media.
Okay.
Yeah. I like watching YouTube videos. I would see like, oh, they're in areas that I know. Like, this is Tennessee. So I'd, hit them up and be like, hey, do you live around here? And that's pretty much how I found the core group that I look for snakes with now. It's just saw him in a random YouTube video and I was like, wait a minute, I know this area.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so you're still herping with them now then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. About how many strong are you?
It's like a core of like 4 to 5 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice.
And now we have like friends just like all over the place that we just meet up with occasionally.
Right.
But yeah, it's that kind of thing.
That's cool. So now on some of your further, like I see you've gone to Australia. We'll throw that in right now. And did you go with these buddies or did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at least one of them. And it was originally planned as a 2-week trip. Mm-hmm. And at first I was like, I really want to go. And it was like a pipe dream.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really don't have the money. And thankfully some things happened and I was like able to get the money, but only for a week. And I was like, this is worth it. I'm going. I'm not stopping myself. But one of my friends that is in that core group went and we met up with 2 other people, one named Joseph. And then I'm not sure if you know Eric Rosenthal.
I know the name. Yeah.
He's Eric or Lost in the Woods on Instagram and social media, stuff like that. Okay. But we met up with them and then met up with 3 locals in Australia.
Okay.
And my friend in like core group of people, he had went last year. And it was one of those like, when am I ever going to get the opportunity to go to Australia again? So yeah, we, planned this one, sort of planned, and had areas that we were going. And then when I finally said, hey, I'm going, they kind of flipped where they were going just so I could see the most while I was there for the week. Okay. They stayed for another week after. Yeah. And what sucks is the job that I have, I'm mainly working on Sundays. So it's like, and it was snow back home and everything was canceled. And I was like, I could have stayed.
Right. That's how it works sometimes. You're just like, I came back for nothing.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
Right. Oh, shoot. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always of the opinion if you're going to fly across the ocean, you might as well stay for a couple weeks, right? If you can. I mean, obviously.
100%.
Yeah. It's tricky. My first trip over was almost a month in Australia. So it was, I don't know how I still don't know how I worked that out, but it worked out.
That's a whole lot of Australia. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I was pretty ready to come home. Like I missed my family, but yeah, it was good times. Yeah. So you do a lot of local herping then. How much, I guess, what kind of percentage of your time you're spending in your home state and traveling to different areas?
Yeah, most time. So I live in Tennessee.
Okay.
Most of the time I'm either herping somewhere local or at least within an hour of home.
Nice.
So
how's the diversity in Tennessee?
It's okay. I mean, we have a lot of really cool animals. Where I live, I mean, we're getting prairie kings. Well, I'm not getting those. Other friends are. Someday for me.
Harder to find. Yeah.
And then pine snakes are a huge thing.
Right.
It's specific. I mean, there were records and research just 25 minutes away from where I live, and
gonna make Rob salivate over that information.
Yeah, so it's like I've every time I go out, it's pretty much within local area.
Nice.
But I guess longer trips, North Carolina, Georgia, and then I ventured up to Snake Road. Like that was just like a dream come true moment, like thing.
Pilgrimage.
It's like everybody has to go to Snake Road. Like, come on.
I still haven't been, but yeah, I agree. I'll make it sometime.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It just seemed like snake after snake after snake. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But it seems like as I get older, the trips going elsewhere are becoming fewer, and I don't like that. I'm trying to like ramp up like how much I'm going. I was telling one of my friends the other day, like I'm trying to make it a goal at least get out every single weekend and go somewhere. Even if I don't see anything, I just want to be out.
Nice. Yeah. It's a good goal. Yeah.
But does that make sense?
Yeah. Cool. Very much. Yeah. I like that idea and attitude. That's a good one. So I guess we'll jump into the topic. We're going to be talking about our herping techniques, the stuff you've developed, the methods that you've learned, herping Tennessee, and then how do they translate when you're somewhere like Australia or, Georgia or whatever, if they're similar. Do the herping techniques travel, I guess is the thing. And so we'll flip a coin. We'll be like, on either side of that. Yeah, they travel. You can use herping techniques wherever you go, or there's some nuances. You got to switch things up if you're doing this or that or the other kind of thing. So, Rob and I will flip the coin to see who gets the pleasure of debating you tonight. So, or fighting with you, I guess. What do you want to call it? Tails. It is heads. So, I'll go ahead if that's all right.
Cool.
Have you moderate if that works.
Sure.
And then Paul will flip a coin to see which side of the topic we get here. So what do you call?
We'll do heads.
Heads. It is tails. I'm a double winner this week. I was a double loser last week, but a double winner this week. So let's go with I'll say they travel pretty well. I'll give you how they may not travel very well, or that kind of thing. That works.
I think it works specifically for Australia.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of, I'm sure there's plenty of instances. So, I guess I'll go ahead and start. So, I live in a desert state. And so, I like to go to other desert areas, going down to Arizona or to Australia, central Australia, that kind of thing. And it seems like the stuff, you do in Utah translates pretty well to what I do in Arizona or in Australia to a large extent, for the most part. If it's hot, you go out at night, look on rocks, road crews, those kind of things. So, I think there's a lot of instances where things are pretty similar. You look for areas that have standing water pretty much year round. You're probably going to have better success in those areas for a lot of things. Other times maybe specialist things like dune, like sidewinders. You might find, you go over to Africa and find like a sidewinding adder or something, sidewinding viper or something, cerastes, so I guess that's kind of how I'd start out. I think there's a lot of things that you can develop and learn as long as you're going to an area of similar habitat or, similar conditions. I think a lot of times the methods will carry over. So I'd start out that way. And I'll let you either refute that or find another point, I guess.
I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree almost in every aspect. The only thing that I am like thinking of specifically where I'm from is we're laying a lot of tin, and we're laying a lot of artificial cover just all over the place.
Right.
And being in Australia, that did not work. Like we were asking, the people that we were with, and like they never lay any kind of cover. Well, they may lay some cover, but most of the time it's just like straight up cruising or at least I think that's the majority of, because all we did really is it was way too hot in the day to do anything.
Yeah. What area were you in? Or
so we were in mostly the Brigalow Belt.
Okay.
So it was
kind
like
of inland Queensland.
Yeah. Most.
Or were you in New South Wales as well? Kind of.
No. Yeah, it was just mostly like in inland Queensland. And then they did Brisbane after that. They traveled back down.
Right.
But yeah, I was thinking, like we're gonna go flip rocks and like all of this stuff, and that did not work. So we just chilled mostly during the day, or we looked for monitors in the day because they're gonna be out. And then at night, we just we're going from like 8 p.m. to sometimes 2 a.m. because like it was crazy the amount of heat that would stay.
Right. Yeah. When would it start to cool off, or did it really cool off?
It definitely did start to cool off around like 11-ish at night. Just not really normal for where I am. And like sometimes go to the Smokies and we're starting at like 7 p.m.
Right.
And then especially during like this time where the fluctuation is just it'll drop to like 60 something degrees by like 9 p.m. we're like, all right, time to go home.
Yeah, that's what's weird. What kind of threw me for a curve too, going over to Australia, is that it gets dark at like 6 p.m. And so, you've been cruising for two or 3 hours and you're like, man, it's like middle of the night. And you're like, oh, it's 9 p.m. Like, you just feel like an old man or something. I better go to bed. It's 9 p.m., So yeah, that was kind of a weird, kind of takes you back a little bit. So, and I mean, I don't know. We were in, I'm trying to think, down in New South Wales, kind of in the mountains a little bit. And I was with some friends. We were herping by a creek for a bit. And then on the drive out, they're like, oh, there's this field and a bunch of tin, laying out in the field. And like, we've been kind of chased out of here by a farmer before. And so we were kind of, apprehensive, but we flipped a blue tongue skink and a small, like copperhead, what is it? The Ramsay, the copperhead over there. And, a couple other little goodies. There was this really crazy skink with a bright yellow belly, and I think it had like 2 toes on each hand or something, kind of weird looking little skink. But it was I guess, similar to some extent that, if I mean, obviously, if you're in the deserts of Utah and you have a piece of tin out, it's probably not going to have anything under it or a board or something. But I mean, looking at, Georgia or Tennessee, like you set out those tin stacks and you can be flipped. I was watching, was it, one of those herpers, maybe NFK or not. It was Will Robertson or somebody out there in the East. And he was flipping this tin stack. And I noticed there was a milk snake just coiled up, and he didn't notice it. He just flipped to the next, stack of tin. And I'm like, how did he miss that? It was right by his hand. But, and then there was a big timber rattlesnake in the bottom. And then when he was putting the pieces back, he saw the milk snake. He's like, how did I miss that? Went back and showed it in slow motion that he just moved. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I caught that, saw that, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah,
but
I think that was Will Robertson. So
yeah.
Maybe down in Louisiana.
Yeah.
So were you guys kind of in that Roma, Charlottesville, St. George, that area?
Oh my gosh. Why am I having a hard time remembering? Oh my word. This is going to be one of those moments where I'm like, all right, 1 second. Let me call my friend. Like, hey, where were we? But it was, all I can remember is, oh yeah, we were in Queensland, but my brain is so bad with directions. My friends are going to hear this and be like, this is the worst guy to ask where you were.
we definitely have guys like that in the group. No worries, and some of it too, I think, is a function of, so were you planned some of it out, or were you mostly kind of like, hey, we're going to rely on the locals and you're just along for the ride and the vibes?
Honestly, we planned out the areas that we were going. And I think because my friend went last time, he was sort of like guide-ish, but really we were kind of relying on the locals to be like, here's the really good areas. We're going to be in, this place for this long. You'll find this and this and this. But somehow, and if there are any Australian herpers listening to this podcast, I am very, very sorry for all the luck we brought to your land, because there were animals that we were finding that the locals that were with us were like, I cannot believe we've never seen these things in our entire life, and you come over here and
first trip and find it. Yeah,
it's like crazy.
Well, tell us what was it? If you can.
Oh my gosh, it's the. Oh my gosh. Go away. It's the, oh my goodness.
You're just building suspense, aren't you?
They found 2 Woma pythons within the strip. And that is
that's huge.
really difficult to even think, that would even happen. I didn't even really think that we would get one. Right. So that made my entire trip. But it's the pale-headed snake.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Hypocephalus or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Is it torquatus or something? Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Starts with a B. Yeah. But yeah, it was that the moment when we got out of the vehicle, the amount of explosive excitement, and they were traveling to us, and we were like, it was amazing. Oh. And then what's some of the other? I think that one alone was like the pinnacle of, oh my gosh, the Americans brought their luck with them.
Really?
Finding 2 Woma pythons, insane.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I haven't seen any Hoplocephalus while I've been over there. They have what's the one in the Diamond area, where they're
the Sydney area. Yeah.
Yeah, they're similar. The oh my gosh, broad-headed snake. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're pretty cool. But yeah, the pale-headed's the Bitorquatus. That's the species name. Yeah. I was close, but not quite there. Yeah. They're really beautiful looking with that. Yeah, really cool facial pattern and light head. Yeah, that is a great find. And it's, you're on the right track when the Australians are getting excited.
Oh yeah. And what's crazy to me, this is sort of like ish subject change, but I went over with this expectation, like I have to be so careful.
Right.
Everything can kill me. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm not going to touch anything. It was crazy. And then one of the locals that we had with us, he was picking up everything.
Hmm.
And I was like, is this what they do? No.
Yeah.
But shout out to Lockie, because he crazy bloke. But we love him. He basically was like, yeah, I'm building up an immunity. And I'm like,
oh man,
that's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
But like he got bit by the pellhead.
Really?
And swelled up.
Oh,
real bad.
right.
And like he was getting bit by other things too.
What? Lucky,
man.
Man.
It's like, and like sometimes he'll send us videos of him, like, you know, like he just got bit by a red belly the other day, and I'm like, are you still alive, bro? No.
Right.
But yeah, it was like it was mostly eye opening to be like, okay, all of these snakes that I had this idea of being so dangerous, and like if I even get nicked by anything, it was like I was going to die. But that wasn't really the case. Like things were really venomous there. But I don't know. I still don't want to get bit. I don't want to test it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, what's fun is when you find yourself tailing some kind of a lapid going, like, what did I just do? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the Eastern brown we found was very chill, quote unquote chill. Yeah. At least the locals were saying like this was one of the most chill ones that they have came across, and it was still, you know, doing all of the things. But it was just fun to sort of learn or relearn that kind of idea that I had in my head was a little bit off.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, I think my first introduction to venomous snakes was I was on my first trip. We saw a couple, I think. Well, that was the thing. We had two cars, and the car that was in front, they saw coastal taipan and stuff like that. And I guess they were trying to get it and tail it so we could see it, but it was too hot and it was too, feisty. So they didn't really want to take the risk. So it got away before we could see it, kind of thing. And, we went over to, this guy worked at a croc farm. Steve Slark is his name, and he had a collection at his house. And so he invited us over for dinner and, served us some really tasty croc steaks or something, it was delicious. But he, pulled out his red belly black snakes and handed them to me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm handling these things now. And then later he had a death adder and he just put it in my hands. I'm like, thanks, man. I'm like, okay, you can take it back now. He's like, yeah, I handle these all the time. I've never, they're, and I'm like, well, it only takes once before, to ruin a trip. And I'm like, but it's kind of funny to do that. And then, going out with some friends in Brisbane area with Troy Kulagowski. He was, I think, allergic or he had kidney issues. So obviously he's not going to handle a venomous snake, just a little too risky, but he did tail a red bellied so I could get a better look at it. And then later on we were with some other friends, Jono and some of the guys, and found a couple more red belly blacks, and they're tailing them and they're showing me how to do it. And so I'm like learning how to, in the field at real time. It was kind of cool, but they're pretty easygoing snakes for the most part. And yeah, obviously you don't want to try it on the ones that are like full temp and just, thrashing around and stuff. That's not the best situation. And, obviously people get bit and that's not great, but, yeah, I didn't want that to happen on my trips, but, I don't know. And then on some recent trips, like Jordan and I were out herping in South Australia, and we came across this mulga, and it was just kind of, we it was like one of the only snakes we saw on the trip. I think we saw maybe 2 or 3, in South Australia. It was really hard finding a snake. And so we were really excited to see this giant mulga on the road. And it just, we were taking pictures and kind of videos and stuff, and then it just starts crawling towards me. And I had my phone, I was videoing it, and I just reached down and picked it up, tailed it, and got it off the road and stuff. I'm like, man, I don't even know what came over me, but it was totally calm. But then I put it down and it did the whole like rear up and come at you in a serpentine motion. It was really cool. I was like, whoa, that's impressive. It kind of gets your heart racing. But yeah, and for the most part, it just kind of crawled off, and we didn't mess with it too much, but just wanted to make sure it got off the road, right? So, just when Australia, do as the Australians, I suppose. So maybe, and that's, I guess that may be something that doesn't translate.
I was about to say that doesn't really translate here.
Right.
Because like dealing with copperheads and rattlesnakes,
right.
Like, I would never think to like tail a timber or a copperhead, even, just with like one hand, like at least with a hook, and like having a tail and a hook, like, but I would never even think.
Right. Just grab it by the tail.
Pick it up. I could never think of that.
Right.
But some of the animals over there, like their demeanor was very calm. Even for like, even it was just like a few minutes, like we were able to at least like take the tail and like set it off the side of the road.
Right.
Still, I mean, that's, not the most safe thing in the world to do.
Yeah. Well, there is a story of, I think it's John Weigel came over to a meeting over in the U.S. and was herping, and he got bit by either a copperhead. I think it was a copperhead. He was flipping rocks and got bit by a copperhead, and here he is, an Australian, has all this experience with, all these venomous snakes, but comes over here and gets tagged, like. Well,
just so we don't get the hate mail, he's an American who's been in
Oh, sorry, not John Weigel. Rick Shine. I think that's who it was. Yeah. Okay. And not John Weigel. Sorry, my bad. But I'm pretty sure it was Rick that got bit over here. So if I'm wrong, it was a prominent Australian herpetologist that was Australian, not an American. John Weigel he has experience with rattlesnakes growing up I think he grew up in Colorado, didn't he? Or somewhere in the West. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know he'd been to Utah State when I met him. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. He knew where I was, he'd been to the town I live in now. So it's kind of fun to hear that. But I mean, those kind of things when you're used to, tailing a snake with, neurotoxin and then switching over to a springy viperid that has a hemotoxin may not be the same experience, and getting bit by a copperhead or a cottonmouth might be a different experience than getting bit by a pale-headed snake, where it's I don't know.
I saw from your Instagram as well that you guys saw at least one spotted black snake, which is really cool, a lapid. What happened there, or what was the story with that?
Yeah, so the spotted black snake was the first Australian snake that we had saw as a group, or we had seen as a group. We were going to our accommodation, cruising the whole way there, of course, because once you're in Australia, that's just what you got to do. And it was a fairly large, I can't remember how large it actually was. It might have been 3-ish feet, give or take. Yeah. But the one that I had a picture of is one that they had caught like just a few hours before we were getting there. And they were like, this one's really, really pretty. We're going to hold it for you, so you can see it, take pictures.
Nice. Yeah.
And they were very, very nice about if something was really cool and we'd never seen it before, they would like keep it for a little bit, just so we could see it, which was like crazy. I love that they did that. But seeing that first
Spotted black.
Yeah. Anyway, spotted black. It was like, okay, now this is real.
Yeah.
We're finding snakes.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, like, I don't really know how venomous this thing is. Like, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to take pictures now? And like, like right. All of these emotions. But yeah, we saw a few others after that, and the variability of spotted black snakes was mind blowing to me. I was like, I'd never really seen that much variability in reptiles specifically than when I went to Australia.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I just love that aspect of it. Yeah. I haven't seen a spotted black yet, so I need to get over to the brigalow, it sounds like. They're really cool species. Yeah. They're beautiful too. I like that grayish, sheen to them, and they're neat looking. I think too, like, so at least, using a hook and stuff, I think you can translate that to different snake body styles, I guess. So like, if you're working with coach whips over here, you'll probably be okay, working with a spotted black snake or a big, quick, venomous elapid over there, potentially, versus a rattlesnake over here and a death adder in Australia. They're a little heavier bodied, to some extent like that. But some kind of practice you can do over here that translates over there. All right.
Beyond the flipping, sort of my imagination of the conditions in Tennessee is that you're probably doing a lot of cruising and probably cruising on asphalt. So you can speak to whether that's fair or not. And then how is that similar or different to then what you were doing in the brigalow? Is that also asphalt? Were you looking for dirt? How does that?
Yeah, so most of the time cruising, especially in Tennessee, it's either on gravel or asphalt. We're mainly doing asphalt evening in the night. And that was pretty much the same thing when we were in Australia. And then gravel midday if it's not incredibly hot. I've never cruised gravel like at night necessarily, so that could be a thing. I just don't have much experience with it really. But then when we were over there, it was just blacktop the whole time. I don't really remember us finding any kind of snake on any kind of dirt-ish road. And there was even one time where I think we turned the way the GPS was telling us instead of going back the way the locals were. Big mistake. But we were going through some of these places where it was shifting from asphalt to dirt-ish, and we weren't seeing anything. And I don't really know why that was. But yeah, everything that we were finding was basically on blacktop, or it was midday in a tree.
Right. Yeah, I just mostly draw the distinction, right? And I haven't been to Georgia for herping at this point, but I would certainly north central Florida, you're looking for dirt, not for blacktop, right? And so kind of highlighting that they're conditionally, or, if Justin, you can speak to this, and I think mostly it's because it's not super paved, but if you're up in far north Queensland, then, it's dirt, and that's sort of the answer. So that's why I highlight that as, something that would fit into that camp of, okay, maybe your local technique, right? If you're Tennessee conditional, you got some elevation, you're used to getting pretty pronounced day to night swings, those sorts of things. If you're in a consistent heat base, maybe that looks different, but maybe you're not. Also, I would venture that when you're abroad, at least you had the locals with you, but I know Justin and I have been in spots of saying, oh, should we, do we trust the rental to this to this dirt road, or how do we feel about it? It looks okay here. Is it about, but there's no way to not an obvious way to turn around based on the width, or not really trusting those things, and you're going to stick to, well, if it's asphalt, at least we know we can get back the way we came.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really didn't kind of travel is, one, we were in a rental, so like I know my vehicle, and I know the areas that we're going to, so it's kind of easy. But over there, that does not work in the slightest. If you don't really know your vehicle, and you don't really know some of the areas, I can't really remember if there were any kind of like, okay, can we pass through this area, or is this going to give us issues? But that seems to happen. It, like, even in the sandhills in Georgia, it's like we're not going to get through that. Like, stop.
Yeah, there is some nice consistency with when you're on dirt roads, that you can see when large snakes have gone across the road. They're there. And we were in herping in Texas, Jordan and I, and seeing these huge tracks from indigo snakes, and sometimes it was like, oh, I've seen an indigo here, and seeing this track there, it's like, oh man, this is like deja vu pretty much. And then in Australia, we were driving some dirt roads and found, a black-headed python crossing the road, and you could see his tracks almost before you see the snake. He was kind of making his way off the road. But when Jordan and Jason Hood spotted that one, so it's pretty cool. I think we were on pavement when we found the Woma. Both Womas that I found in Australia were on paved roads, and I don't know. I'm not as good at herping on dirt roads, I think, so I prefer the paved roads because it's easier to see stuff, that kind of thing. And for some reason, man, when Jordan and I were in South Australia, I kept missing stuff on the dirt roads, and he's like, "Oh, is that a gecko?" I'm like, I didn't see anything, and he'd flip around, there'd be a gecko there. I'm like, gosh, dang it, what is wrong with me? I'm just not spotting stuff. But so, those kind of things occur as well. But I think and sometimes we get, preference for one or the other. So maybe if you're more attuned to, cruising on a paved road, then you're going to have better luck, cruising on a paved road if you're in a different place or a different country. But yeah. Yeah.
And what you highlight, right, with the good and bad of dirt is it sort of tells you what you missed in a way, right. If it's not there, right? If you see those tracks, I think, Justin, it was after you'd come back. It was after we did find a pine in the Pine Barrens that the next day we were kind of in that similar area, similar conditions. And it was very clear that another, pine snake sized snake had gone through, and it's like, well, the width on that, I don't think that's a black racer. It's like, well, we know that we missed it, but when, especially on those rarely traveled things, that it's like, maybe this was yesterday also, who knows? So, yeah.
But I mean, when we were looking for the indigos, it had rained like a ton.
Right.
And
it had cleaned up.
Any tracks you see. Yeah. And also, we were in an area kind of next to the border. So like they had these things that they would drag, like tires and stuff like that they would drag behind the patrol vehicles that were patrolling the border to be able to see footprints of people crossing in illegally. And so they would smooth out the roads and like
timestamps on it.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd have like half the road would be pristine, clean, smooth, and then you'd see like a track or something like that coming across the road. So it was kind of a nice little tool to be able to look for snakes there, even though the the patrol agents kind of grumble once in a while about it. We did chat with one guy and he was really cool, but it's like sometimes you're like, hey, get off our roads, you're messing it up, at least stay on this side, don't drive on our smooth area where we're looking for tracks, kind of thing. So I guess as long as you play nice, you get away with stuff sometimes. And they were public roads, so it's not like we were trespassing or anything. Yeah.
Now that's a technique we'll have to take to the sandhills.
Right.
No. If you want to know where exactly.
Yeah. And Rob does make a good point though. Like unless you've had a recent rain or something, or heavy winds to kind of clear everything out, you don't know how old it is. There may be some tells to it, but when we were herping in southwestern Utah, we'd have our tracks, and then all of a sudden we'd come back and there would be Gila monster tracks over our tracks. So like it hit out, and then waited till we passed, then it kind of booked it across the wash or whatever. And it's like, come on, we just want to see you, man, come on. But yeah, so we knew that they were in the area and they were moving right after we did, because their tracks were on top of ours.
When you are in that sandhill habitat, have you had success sort of reading the tracks and finding a snake just off the road? I know, I don't know that it's ever worked for me at this point, but I know that it's worked for other people. So it's always something that I'm curious.
Right.
I mean, I've had friends that have found almost immediately the snake that had just crossed, but it's all a matter of like time and luck. So, but most of the time when I see a track, I'm not really good at seeing the track unless it's a big animal. I've never really had luck seeing the animal after it's already crossed. Mm-hmm. But I know people who are like, oh yeah, that's easy. You just go the way it seems that they're going. And I'm like, but it looks the same.
Yeah. It can be a little manning. I guess the obvious one is the Sidewinder, and their little curve points the way they're going or whatever. But I haven't had much luck tracking down Sidewinders either. So I've followed a few tracks and just awesome. We followed a Gila monster track like halfway up the side of a cliff. We were just following it, and like you'd be able to see where it went, and then it would hit rock, and you'd be like, okay, spread out and find the tracks on the other side of the rock, and then you'd pick up the trail again. You're like, oh, here it is, and it went this way. It was kind of a fun little game. We never found it, but it was fun kind of tracking it across the area, and yeah, it's kind of a nice little extra added element. But again, I really sucked at seeing those tracks. Jordan was like, oh, there's a track. And we pull over and there'd be like a, 4-inch wide track, like almost like a big tire. And it was a big, indigo snake. And I'm like, yeah, I did not see that, It's kind of crazy.
So my visualization for Tennessee is that, and I suppose it does vary dramatically depending on where you are, but it's probably lots of leaf litter, moisture, something that we don't believe in or have out here in the West. How did sort of as a biota, how did it compare to what you're used to being down in the Brigalow? And sort of what is that like? Would you call that sort of plains-ish? Is it more desert-ish? What was the sort of impression it gave? And I'm sure that's very different, because I know both Justin and I, we prefer herping in the desert to being back east, because there isn't, much leaf litter cover and, all sorts of detritus and things that make it much more difficult.
No ticks.
No ticks, yes, also.
Yeah.
I especially where I am, it's a lot of leaf litter, a lot of pine, needle type thing, depending on the area, wet, dry. But over there, it was particularly dry grassland scrub, especially in the Brigalow.
Right.
Not super like deep red clay that you would see like more inland. But yeah, it was just very dry, which was surprising to me that we were still seeing snakes because it was so dry. And then like the locals that were with us, obviously they would say things like when it rains or like right after a rain, like, there's a lot of movement, and it's like that. It's sort of the same thing, over here.
Right.
That is sort of one thing that can kind of travel when you're in any part, really. Like if there's water, stuff is going to be active. Everything is attracted to the water. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, that's deserts. Once rain hits the desert, and maybe when it warms up a little bit, because I mean, if it comes at the wrong time, that can really mess up your herping. If it's like cools everything down right before the sun sets, then they're like, well, I'm not going to go out there because it's cold, that kind of thing. So we've had a lot of instances of rain, improperly timed rain. Like, come on, at least let the sun shine for a few hours after the rain. That will help us immensely. But yeah, if you have a good rain, you can have a pretty great night of herping. Yeah, we were herping in West Texas and got some super heavy rains, and there were like boulders on the road and all sorts of stuff, but it cooled things down a bit, and we had to run for the car. I think we saw a few things that night though, like we saw that gopher snake and the one that disappeared on Owen.
Yep, and some night snake.
Yeah.
Nachschlange. Yeah, right. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a function, as you say, they're just a function of the interaction with the temperature, time of year and temperature. So that, in West Texas, in the early summer, when it's, otherwise would be 100 degrees, that, when it's bringing that down to the mid or upper 80s, that's super helpful. When we're shoulder seasoning it, as I'm wont to do down in, southeast Arizona, that if instead it takes us from the low 70s to the upper 50s, that's not ideal.
Right. Yeah. And also, all the rains in Arizona were really nice for bringing out the turtles. I hadn't seen box turtles, and things like that. The mud turtles, that was fantastic. Yeah.
Mud turtles, I wouldn't have believed existed in that area.
Right. Yeah.
When we first showed up, by the end of the week, it's going, man, there's, we've stumbled into 8 of them in this canyon. This is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're just like all of a sudden appearing out of nowhere almost. Like, where did they come from and how are they surviving?
I don't know.
Yeah. Like it was incredible. I love turtles. They're so tough, like just have that staying power. I guess amphibians are similarly. And I mean, that was another thing that was kind of crazy in Australia. Like it was hot as anything, I was just roasting, and there was a little bit of rain coming through. It hadn't hit yet, but like I go out cruising and there's like green tree frogs on the road, like how are you even surviving, being on the asphalt at this temperature? And they were just fine. One was even trying to breed a DOR, another frog that had been hit. It was horrible. I'm like, dude, you gotta move on. This one's not worth your time here. So kind of sad, but crazy. Yeah. But I think in general that aspect of rains, potentially bringing activity out. We had a similar situation up in Darwin area where it rained. It had been really dry, and the first rains were coming through. We're like, this is going to be good. And it was fantastic. Like that was probably the best night of herping that I've had, with all the different species we saw. We saw, night tigers and a couple pygmy mulgas, a black-headed python, olive python, a bunch of geckos. It was fantastic. And then the next night we went back to the same spot and saw virtually nothing. And then the giant moon came out. We're like, oh, maybe that's the problem here. So
right, conflicting intervening factors. Although I think as much as saying we're kind of framing this in the context of moisture coming, I think it's almost rate of change relative to the environment that it is, right? In the rainforest, I think going from wet to dry, that same transitionary state can have that same impact. When we were up in outside of Cairns, right? When it was actively raining, the only thing that didn't seem to care was scrub pythons. The carpets and things had been out before the cyclone was incoming. Once it came, it was frogs and the scrubs that didn't care, but everything else was like, no, I'll just wait till it's not raining. So I think it's almost a function of that sort of transitional state, even temporary, from the normal, that maybe is an inducement.
Yeah.
Right? So in a wet area, actually dry can sometimes be good, or at least right on that front end of it.
Right. Yeah. I think that can, I think that can translate though, like if you're in a rainforest and, it's raining all the time. And it goes
dry. And
then it dries out.
It gets wet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Again, with temps it's probably, I don't know. It's almost, yes, I think that maybe it's how far we go up the chain in terms of saying, okay, are we just talking about transitory states in any precipitation or any temperature or anything like that? Or, if we talk about it more specifically and say, well, in the desert, well, this is similar to other desert environments. If I'm in a humid environment, it's similar to other humid environments, right? It travels depending on the sort of level, with the stratus level that we're looking at it.
Right. What would you say your favorite find was over there? What got you most pumped for when you're herping Australia?
I mean, honestly, everything was a lifer for me.
Yeah.
So I was like even the bugs, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Right. Yeah.
But I think one of the coolest things that I was like, this looks so different in Australia versus, like, especially even in the pet trade, were bearded dragons.
Right.
I was so surprised. I was like, what is, like, why do they're so skinny?
No hammocks either.
Right. God.
Bizarre. How do they even survive?
But I think one of the coolest things that we found was Burton's legless lizards.
All right. Yeah.
And just finding out about that, I was like, they just look so weird and they're so cool.
Right.
But yeah, it's that kind of thing.
No.
But like talking about like weather and like it being dry as all get out over there. Mm-hmm. One of the funniest things was in our accommodation, like the toilet was like in an outside area, and it was like ran by like rainwater and all of that stuff. So during the day, the frogs would hide, but then at a given point, you would go into the bathroom, but there's like 20 or 30 just on the toilet inside. I was like,
right. Yeah. You have to fish them out before you feel too bad about it. Yeah. That's crazy. And I think, it seems like, I'm trying to think over here if we find a lot of stuff. I mean, you'll find stuff at like the porta potty. I still remember when I was a kid, we were in St. George passing through or something, southwestern Utah, and we were stopped at a rest stop or a bathroom or something, and I found a banded gecko crawling along on the wall, like just kind of, I'm like, I didn't know these guys crawled on walls, but they, he's just using the little fingernails or whatever, climbing up a pole or something. But I was like, that's cool, and a lot of times when you have lights and bugs and stuff, like we'll stop and look in Central Australia, same kind of thing. You'd stop at the restrooms at the park headquarters or whatever, and there'd just be geckos all over the wall, different kinds and shapes and sizes, looking around the lights, trying to grab moths or whatnot, some of the flying insects. So, and I mean, carpet pythons are definitely notorious for seeking out, attics or areas where they can hang out. So, and I think, similarly, you can look around dilapidated buildings, things like that, or farms where there's rodents, you're probably going to attract some snakes in. So I think seeking those areas can be successful, whether you're in Australia or in the US, or a different state. It seems like, dumps and things like that, where there's a lot of ground cover, can be high yield sometimes, even though it's not necessarily very beautiful or pristine to herp. You can find stuff under garbage pretty readily. I think we found
consequences of trespassing or checking out those places is probably doesn't travel all that well. The South feels a little bit different than Australia. I think you're maybe less likely to be shot in Australia, but maybe not. I'd be curious.
Yeah, we were looking for blue tongue skinks in the Highland or the Alpine region of New South Wales, and my friend was driving. He's like, well, I'm not, I'll stay here in the car, but we've gone here before, but sometimes they get a little upset about it. So we had climbed a fence, walked through this field, and we were flipping tin by this kind of shed, area, and they had some cows, I believe, out there. And so we were flipping along and, and looking under stuff. And all of a sudden we hear this dog barking up the way. And we're like, oh, I wonder if they're going to alert the property owners to our presence. And then all of a sudden we heard a gunshot. And so we took off running back, jumped the fence and jumped in the vehicle and sped off before we got shot. So I think there are some similarities, especially out in the country, in Australia to what might happen, And, you hear those kind of horror stories around here, too.
It was sort of the opposite, especially at the Brigalow. It's like,
yeah,
there was no one.
Right.
Hardly anybody around. So we were like, let's just go here. Cool. Yeah. But yeah, we were in some of the craziest places because there was hardly anybody there.
Yeah. That's one of the beautiful things about Australia is there's so many remote places that just don't have a lot of people. And I mean, like on the East Coast, we'd be inland a little bit, but there's still quite a few towns. And, we're trying to find, some place to pull off the road. And it's like kind of a major road. And you're worried about getting in trouble if you're sleeping, too close to the city or something like that. So, yeah. And especially tourist areas, they don't want you sleeping for free in some of these places. Exmouth was a rough place to try to find a place to bed down.
Paul, did you see the tongue of the Burtons? Any of the Burtons that you found?
Yes.
They're insane, right?
I was like, why do they look like this?
Yeah.
One of my friends got a shot of it licking its eyeball, and I was like, there's no way this is real.
So many crazy structures, different striations,
yes.
All this. I think it's so they can grab onto geckos, right? So they mostly eat geckos, and I think it gives them a better grip. But yeah, totally. I couldn't believe it. The first one that I had found. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're one of the most widespread reptiles over there. So you find them pretty much anywhere you go. I've found them all over the place in there.
Well, that's what everyone says, Justin. I don't know. It took me 4 trips to find one, and then I did see a couple. But yeah, I mean, they weren't turning up for me until
we were seeing so many when we were over there. It was crazy.
Right.
And like, they looked so different, just in different areas. Like even close by, it was like,
right. Yeah, we found one that had just like these bright orange scales on its belly and a little up on, speckles on the side. It was really cool looking out in the center of Australia, and found a really dark striped one that was also in the center. Yeah. Like near Kings Canyon area, Watarka. How about pythons? That's kind of where my interest goes. You found the womas. That's huge. That's really exciting, and I would love to find a brigalow woma. But what did you see any other python species?
Yeah, we saw children's pythons, and we saw carpet.
Oh, cool.
Or the jungle carpet or coastal carpet pythons over there, or where we were. They also saw black-headed.
Okay.
And I believe that was it.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good to see several species of python. That's awesome.
And one of my favorite shots that I've ever gotten thus far of any snake was that coastal carpet python.
Oh, yeah. That's a nice shot you got.
The eye alone was like magnificent.
Right.
I've never seen an animal that like detailed of an eye before.
Oh, they're such cool snakes. Yeah. I love their eyes too, are really impressive. Yeah. Did you find more than just one each, or I guess you said 2 womas, but were there a bunch of the children's or?
I think they found another children's python, or spotted python. It was one of the, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. I think you get.
I think one or two black-headed pythons, two womas, and that coastal. I think they found another coastal.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask them. It's one of those where
Right. Well, and if they're going closer to Brisbane, then there's probably a really good chance that they're finding more coastals. Like that's the land of the coastal. Yeah, they're cool snakes. I've only found one coastal in my trips over to Australia, and granted, I haven't spent a ton of time over there, but just one coastal in Mount Glorious, down kind of Ipswich way, that area. Yeah.
That's just, I think, solely, Justin, especially knowing your how adroit you are in the field, that's a function of your time not in that area. Because there was that one night, I think we saw 7, up
wow.
yeah, when we were in sort of coastal central Queensland, there was one area on cruising dirt, and it was something like 7 within 90 minutes. Something like
that's
that.
awesome. Yeah, I would love to have a night like that, but I think I've found more imbricata than I have coastals. we did get to go hang out with Steve Irwin's dad on his property, and he had a couple coastals that had been caught, and he was going to release them on his property. So he waited for us, and we got to go release a couple with Steve Irwin's dad and Brian Barczyk and a bunch of other herpers. It was pretty cool. So I have pictures of that one, but I can't really count that as a find, But man, sounds like you guys had a really great trip, especially for 1 week in country. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
My friends were like, of all times to go for a short period of time, this was like the ideal.
Right. You picked it just perfectly.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Cool.
And I have to agree with you on the Eastern bearded dragons, in particular the Barbata. They're just amazing animal. I think that was my favorite animal from that trip that I was referring to with all those coastals. It was, basically jet black with the yellow inside of the mouth and the silver pattern on the back. Just truly, truly exceptional, truly amazing creatures.
Yeah. Well, Paul's not feeling well, so we'll probably end the torture here and let him jump off here. But tell people where they can find your awesome pictures and more information about yourself. See your other trips.
My Instagram handle is tn.herper.
Okay. So Tennessee herper.
Yeah, Tennessee herper.
It's easy. Cool.
Yeah, super simple. And that's where I do all of my reptile and amphibian photography.
Okay.
And if you scroll far enough down, you'll see the progression of my photography skills. Thankfully, they have gotten so much better, and I'm thankful for that. But sometimes, I scroll back sometimes and I go, why did I post that? But still, nice. It's like the shot doesn't matter. It's like it's seeing the animal that matters. Yeah, so it's like if we get so caught up in, we have to get the perfect shot, we miss the opportunity to experience the beauty around us. And it's like, I know so many people who are obsessed with trying to get the picture, and instead you're forgetting you're looking at the most incredible animal in front of you. Get yourself together. Right.
Good advice. Yeah. Take your face away from the camera for a minute to just appreciate it. Right. Yeah, that's cool. What rig do you shoot with?
At the moment I shoot with a Canon RP, and I have an external flash and all of that stuff. And then I mainly, almost exclusively now, use my I think it's my Lao 100 millimeter 2x macro. Really, really clean shots that I'm getting, thankfully.
That's awesome.
But yeah, cool stuff.
My brother let me borrow his RP, so I've been having a lot of fun with that. Not taking many pictures in the winter, but yeah, I'm excited to get back out and use it some more. But, yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. It's been a fun chat with you and discussion, and yeah.
Thanks for having me. This was really, really fun.
Yeah, for sure. Hope you feel better. Yeah, sorry.
Just having a headache. I don't, not sure really.
Right. Yeah.
We'll be all right.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Kind of like to end the show, and if anything cool that we've seen herpetologically wise. Rob mentioned a book last week called Pyro by Dallin Kohler, and I actually purchased it while we were on the podcast, and it's been a really great read. He's a great writer, kind of brings it alive, his trips and stuff like that, the animals. So I'd recommend it. It's pretty cool, and it's about finding snakes. It starts out in Utah anyway, and mentions some folks that I know pretty well. So that was pretty neat to see that. So I appreciate the suggestion there.
Absolutely. Well, and it had come from Tom Major. So I don't know if you noticed that one of the blurbs is from Tom, and highlights certainly from Herpetological Highlights and all
that. Check that. I wonder if they're interacting, because now he's over in
China with
so.
Dr. Messenger, I believe.
Right.
And then you sent the paper that was maybe one of the outgrowths of the book, or the background for the book. So
the first paper he talks about building a accurate range map for pyros in Utah. So that was pretty cool, and overall in their range. But yeah, it's funny to hear some of those reports of records from Salt Lake area, and where you just don't find them anymore, and where you probably would see them if they were there, with the number of people
somebody
going
be turning them up,
all the trails. So kind of crazy. But
Paul, I know you got to run, but I have to bring it up. So hognose are one of my favorite groups of snakes, and I saw you got the transition area photo of an eastern hognose to a southern hognose. So I did hike up a Simus last year, and that was one of my favorite moments. So I'm always interested in hearing about Simus stories. So if you wouldn't mind, just a brief interjection.
Yeah, I get my first. I think my first Simus that I ever encountered was in the North Carolina sandhills, and they're way more prevalent in the Georgia sandhills, from what I've seen. But they're so cool looking, and like the whole scoot thing, the Simus shuffle that they do, it was so cool to experience that for the first time, because I'd never really seen that in Easterns. I was like, okay, this is the one thing that I have to see. If we find one, I have to see them do this shuffle.
Yeah, I still haven't seen a live heterodon yet. I need to see something, but yeah, love to see one play dead. That would be cool too. But yeah.
Except when you're trying to get the picture where they're not playing dead.
Right. Yeah. You got to be patient with those things. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have to have you back sometime. It was fun to chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we'll thank Eric and Owen and the Morelia Pythons radio umbrella for hosting us, and looking forward to some of their upcoming podcasts. They've got some cool shows lined up, so check out Morelia Python Radio for sure. But we'll catch you next time for Reptile Fight Club. See ya.